This is a 3D printable lightsaber, but with a twist. Literally. This is so cool. By now, you've probably seen a bunch of these collapsing lightsabers or swords that have been made popular by 3D printing world. Well, these all have these tubes that intercollapse and close on top of each other at the flick of a wrist. And now we have a new sword type option. This is a TwistSaber that opens and closes by twisting the blades. This is wild. This is some serious engineering that has gone into these 3D print files. This was initially offered as a Kickstarter campaign and is now a set of 3D printable files that you can go online to TwistSabers.com and buy the files. They are rather expensive for 3D print files. They come in at $38 currently as the time of making this video. And then there are a whole bunch of different skin options that you can then print to fit your particular blade to match any kind of saber that you're interested in. So in today's video, I wanted to go through the ins and outs of getting these printed, everything from the actual files themselves to actually getting them printed and the settings that you're going to need to use to actually getting them assembled. There is a lot that goes into this. It's a rather complex process compared to the rather straightforward process of 3D printing these collapsible lightsabers. And what I've got here is the basic TwistSaber that you get as part of that initial kit package that you purchase. That's going to give you the access to a smaller blade option, a larger blade option, as well as a dual blade option. And just to reiterate, inside that kit, you will receive everything that you need to create either a small variation of the TwistSaber like this here, or a larger variation that's going to be slightly taller that I'm also going to be printing in some of the skin options that they have that you can additionally purchase based on some of your favorite characters. So one thing I wanted to call out that wasn't immediately clear when I was browsing the files when I was looking to purchase some of those skins is that anything indicated by a 1 is the smaller blade option, like this one here. This is going to fit on any 3D printer that has a build volume of at least 250 millimeters high. The other option that you're going to see is a file indication of a 2 that signifies that's going to need to be printed on a 3D printer like the Neptune 4 Plus that I'm going to be using for all of these prints in today's video. That is going to print on a printer that needs to be a build volume of 300 millimeters or higher. You're also going to need a 3D printer that's fairly well dialed in. This is a honestly pretty good torture test for your 3D printers to see how well you've got your profiles dialed in your 3D printers to get these all assembled properly and printing well. Once you have all the files downloaded, I would really recommend breaking them up into smaller folder subsets because there is a ton of different files and it can be very confusing with the naming conventions to keep all these organized. I ended up printing the wrong set of files more than a few times throughout this process here. So I ended up breaking mine down into subfolders here of the smaller blades and the larger blades, as well as the dual blade options. There's also a free set of files for the assembly tools that I would 1000% recommend downloading because you're going to need those for the actual assembly process. This makes it significantly easier to get these all properly assembled. Also, please note that the assembly image guide is included in the assembly file section, not the actual files that you purchased for the sabers. That visual is going to be really helpful to understanding what files, where they go and how they're going to be positioned. But there are also tutorial videos that the creator here has made that are really in depth that walk you through the entire process of getting these assembled. And inside that folder is a text file that includes all of the settings that you're going to want to use for printing all the different parts. I do wish that was a little bit better organized or explained in that text document for all these parts because it's not entirely clear what settings you should be using for everything. But in the end, I was able to get everything printed. And to do that, I printed those on today's video sponsor, which is Elegoo, the makers of this Elegoo Neptune 4 Plus 3D printer. Not only is the Neptune 4 Plus a fast, affordable 3D printer, but it also has that nice large build volume that allowed me to print the larger Saber file parts directly here on the Neptune 4 Plus, but I could also print all the smaller blade options as well directly on this 3D printer. Elegoo is also running their Black Friday deal currently online on their website as well as over on Amazon, where you can find some amazing deals. One that I would really recommend if you're really on a tight budget is the Neptune 3 Plus, which is the previous iteration of this machine here, coming in at just over $200 for a tank of a 3D printer that just is going to print amazing for you. Elegoo also makes some amazing filaments, and if you have not tried printing those on your Elegoo 3D printers or your other 3D printers, you're really missing out because they make some amazing filaments. If you're interested in more information about any of Elegoo's products, you'll find links to those down below. Once you have everything printed, you're gonna end up with these screws, you're gonna end up with some blades, you're gonna end up with this little casing thing that all this is gonna go directly into. Then you have some of your external casing parts, depending on which saber you printed, as well as some details that are gonna go on that. But you also have these gears that you're gonna need to incorporate into this that's gonna allow it to twist these blades up and down. Also, if you're planning on printing multiples of these like I did, I would really recommend either putting these in boxes or in large Ziploc bags here like I did to help keep everything organized, because after a little bit, all of the pieces kind of look the same, but I can guarantee you there are small differences between the smaller size option as well as the larger files, and I ended up mixing these up here multiple times before making this video. One other tip that I would really recommend paying close attention to is when you're slicing and printing your files, these two prints here look identical, and it's the exact same printed part in the same filament, but one of these I did not have the setting dialed in properly for the line width set to 0.4, which it should have been, and it was slightly larger than that because of my default profile, and the parts for these sabers here will not slide together. They just will not fit properly together. It is a really tight tolerance when it comes to getting these things assembled. And what I mean by that is you'll see here there is the actual gear portion of this that's gonna help insert into your actual blades, and it's gonna have to notch in there, and then it should slide directly in there if everything printed properly. If not, you're gonna have to do a bunch of sanding to help try and loosen up the openings here, or adjust and reprint the actual thread insert that's gonna have to go into each of these blades. This is all covered in that installation video that I would really recommend following, because there's no way I'm gonna be able to cover all of the ins and outs of the exact details that they cover in that installation guide. It's really worth watching. Regardless of what 3D printer you're working with, more than likely you're gonna need some 220 grit sandpaper to help smooth down some of the areas of where you might have some elephant foots from where your print was on the bed printing, or where there's some actual gripping pieces here on the model where these two parts are gonna intertwine and lock together, but you want them to be able to really freely, smoothly slide between each of the parts. But you don't want it to be too smooth. It's like a fine balance that you're going for here. I ended up having to reprint a few of these as well, or a few different parts, because I ended up sanding them a little too much. That's not only for the blades, but also for the actual guided rails that you're gonna be sliding on here. If it's too tight or there's too much friction on there, you might need to give that a little bit of sanding. Basically, you want to make sure that between each of the parts there is as little friction as possible when sliding these together. Now, to help make sure that everything slides smoothly, it's recommended to use some super lube, and there's also 3D printable attachments that you can use that will allow you to more easily lube up the rods that are going to be inserted directly into the saber blades. You're gonna twist the super lube bottle directly into the handle, and then you can squeeze a little lube out. Once it starts coming out, you can then insert your rods to actually lube them up. All right, so this video was getting way too long. Originally, I had gone through and walked through all the steps to getting this actually assembled, and the video was well over 30 minutes long, which is just way too long for my attention span. So I figured I'd just kind of cut through all of the installation, since there's a great detailed installation guide by the creator of the file that if you're gonna end up printing these, you're just gonna end up following that one anyways. So I figured I'd show you one of the completed sabers here. I have not twisted this yet. I actually just took it apart and reinserted the blade because the blade was not sitting correctly. I didn't think I just installed it correctly. There's a lot of points where you could potentially not install this correctly. So fingers crossed this one works, because the larger saber ended up breaking during the installation process. I got everything almost entirely assembled, and when I was snapping some of the bits together, the ends of these screws that clamp together to the blades ended up breaking inside of the saber, and I had to take everything apart. So I might end up trying to reprint these parts here so that I can actually test out this larger saber blade. Since I have everything else fully printed, I'll just have to reprint those, lube them all up again, and get them assembled. And let's give this a test and see how it works. Oh no. Not bad. I think I still have something quite not done correctly, because I think the blade should be extending a good bit longer than this. This is kind of looking a little dinky here. Yeah, something's, oh no, something's. Also, I think I didn't quite smooth out some of the areas well enough for, you'll see now, this top part is not inserting correctly. I don't know if I've ever done a file, a 3D file, a print file review before. This is definitely a really hard to print file. This is like, if I had to give like an easy, medium, hard level ranking for this print file, it would definitely be on the harder side, just because of all of the print settings that you're gonna need to have properly refined, getting all these parts printed and then assembled correctly so that they actually work properly here. There is so much potential with this, but unfortunately, it's a lot of it is going to be on the user error side here. Thankfully, I was able to get this one to assemble. I will say, for whatever reason, I had so much more of an easy time assembling the default set of files there for this TwistSaber. I don't know if it's got to be coming down to something how I printed this one or how I didn't assemble it quite as well as I assembled this one. And you'll see where this one still, it slips a little bit. Like, there we go. Yeah, there we go. So it's like it wants to grip. So I'm assuming there's something that I haven't quite done right with the assembly of these. So if you end up printing them and testing it out for yourself, let me know, because I definitely am wanting to revisit this and try to properly print these. But I can only imagine how much went into engineering these files so that they actually extend with the twist and then retract back down. These are really wild prints that you should definitely try out if you're interested in printing something that's a little bit on the harder side of the actual printing and assembling, but they are really fun if you can get them to work. I also want to say a huge thank you to all my Patreon supporters for your continued support. If you're interested in things like my 3D printer settings that I use for my Neptune 3D printers, you'll find those over in my Patreon. Also, any tips or donations or super thanks that I receive here in my videos from now until the end of December are going directly to my son's middle school to help support any families that can't afford to send their kids on their upcoming spring trip to Washington, D.C. So far, we've raised $235, and I'm also personally matching any donation that I receive. And again, this money is going towards students that might need that extra financial assistance to attend this trip. And make sure to let me know what you think about these crazy TwistSaber 3D printable files that you can obviously print for yourself. Hey, thanks so much for watching, you all, and I'll see you next time. Bye now. This is a 3D printable lightsaber, but with a twist. Oops. This is a 3D printable lightsaber. Whoops, shoot.